والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم ما بعد. To proceed, today inshallah we will go over مجالات عمل القاعدة الخامسة من القواعد الفقهية الكلية الكبرى. We will go over the operative domains or the scope of operation. Scope of operation or operative domains of the maxim العادة محكمة, custom is authoritative. And certainly when we talk about مجالات عمل القاعدة, these basically domains of operation or operative domains will become clearer to us when we go over the applications. Because بالمثال يتضح المقال. Examples are, particularly helpful in clarifying sort of abstract notions. So, however, to give you a summary before we go into the applications, before we go into the subsidiary maxims under this qaida and their applications, for a summary, we have said before there are three operative domains of this qaida. One is to understand the speech of the address of the lawgiver, the Sharia, Allah, His Messenger, to understand the Sharia itself. The second is to understand the speech of people, qualify it, restrict it, specify it, etc. Understand the speech of people. The third is to adapt the rulings, the religious rulings, to new customs. Adapt religious rulings to new customs, which is adaptation of legal rulings that are based on custom and whose effective cause is tied to it, and we will explain what this means insha'Allah. So, one, understand, define address. Two, understand speech of people. Three, adaptation or alteration, adaptation is better, of legal rulings. Let's go over each one of them, inshallah, and let's try to finish, Ya Rab, today, the operative domains. Understanding people's speech. We have talked about this before, so let's go over this quickly. ولأن ما لم يرد الشرع بتقديره يرد إلى العرف كالكثير من العمل في الصلاة والتفرق والإحراز. This is a statement by Imam ibn Qudama, where he said, whatever the Sharia has not defined is referred to urf, such as excessive movement in prayer, matters of tafarruq, which is separation. Separation, when we talk about tafarruq, what do we mean? We're talking about the option of the session, khiyar al-majlis, option of the session. If we're having like a transaction, like an agreement, like a sale agreement, for instance, we need to separate so that there is no more option of the session, which is the option to cancel, revoke the agreement. So walk away, get out of the store. So we've separated. Now the transaction is binding. There is no option of the session, khiyar al-majlis. Okay, so that's what, because we will repeat the word tafarruq, separation, and just this is what separation is about. Okay. And ihraz, which is safeguarding. When we say that it was kept in a hirs, this property was kept in a hirs, and you stole it, so you deserve to have your hand cut. It has to be kept safeguarded in a hirs, in a place that is proper to safeguard a similar property. Okay, and you've kept it and then you're not liable if you keep it in a hirs. If someone entrusts you with a property and you keep it in a proper hirs, a proper safeguarding place, secure place, then you're not liable if it is lost or stolen or destroyed or whatever. So then what does that hirs? What is tafarruq? How do we define tafarruq? How do we define the hirs, the secure place? How do we define excessive movements in prayer? Imam ibn Qudama is saying the Sharia did not specify. The language is not sufficient to basically give us a definition for each one of these. Therefore, all of these matters are referred back to al-urf, or the customs of the people, because also they change. Like 500 years ago, you have this much gold, for instance. Where do you keep it? Like 500 years ago, wherever they kept it. But nowadays, it would be different. The hirs for gold is different nowadays than the hirs for gold 200 years ago. Okay. So the Sharia, for instance, mentioned Salah and Siyam and Zakah, and we said that the Sharia defined them in great detail, so we don't need language or urf here. The Sharia already defined them. This does not mean that we will never refer to urf in matters of worship, because we've just said that excessive movements in prayer is referred back to urf. Haven't we just said excessive movements in prayer will be referred back to urf? Yes. So it doesn't mean that, but it means that to a great, great extent, these particular acts of worship have been defined in great detail by the Sharia. Therefore, our reliance on language and urf is very limited. Okay. If the lawgiver mentions a matter and attaches a ruling to it without defining it, we refer to language. As-sariq, the thief, we have to refer back to language, because not everyone who takes a property that doesn't belong to him is a thief, is considered a thief. Embezzlement is not considered theft. It is, to some extent, theft. It is haram, it's bad, but it is not considered sariqa, theft per se. And then they sort of have discussions over in the bash, the people who dig graves and like steal. So not everyone who takes property that is not his is considered sariq. In what sense? In the sense of deserving of the had punishment. Okay. At times, I said before, the lawgiver directs us to urf. عاشرهن بالمعروف. Live with them according to reason, according to that which is good, according to that which is customary. There are many matters the Sharia did not explicitly define. Minimum age for menstruation and puberty, menopause, minimum and maximum durations of menstruation, postpartum bleeding, financial maintenance of relatives. What does that mean, financial maintenance of relatives? Does that change with times? So if you say to me, you find it in a fiqh book that financial maintenance meant basically bread every day, meat once a week, or the average family. Is this sort of a perpetual binding ruling, or this is the fuqaha in their times figuring out what financial maintenance means? It's the fuqaha in their time figuring out what financial maintenance means. So delay that prevents annulment due to defect in sales, separation in sales, option of decision, possession in contracts, qabd. When have you possessed the property? Reviving dead land. What does reviving dead land mean? Public announcements of lost property, luqata. How do we do public announcement of lost property? You know, during their times, you basically stand by the door of the masjid and you make the public announcement. You go to the market and you make a public announcement. And then people will say, now, if we have lost and found, and you ignore to go to the lost and found booth or whatever, and then you stand by one of the doors and make a public announcement. Is that enough? No, it is not enough. Nowadays, we have a booth or like a station or the police department or this, where you could announce lost and found. Okay. So that was the first thing. Things that the Sharia, you know, attached rulings to, but did not define for us. The Sharia attached rulings to certain concepts, but did not define them for us. We refer to language. If we don't have a proper definition and the detailed and sufficient definition in the language, we refer to urf. Second, okay, we're done with this. Second, understanding the speech of people. So Imam al-Qudama rahimahullah said, it is permissible to rent a shirt to wear, and if the custom to remove, if the custom of the people is to remove it when you go to sleep, then you have to remove it. Renting clothes, you know, people still rent clothes. So if you rent a tuxedo and you go to sleep in it, is that customary or not? You know, probably not. Then you violated even though the agreement did not specify that you should not sleep in it, you know, based on the customs of the people and the particular place and particular time. So he said that you need to take it off if you go to sleep, if it is not customary to sleep in them. لأن الإطلاق يحمل على المعتاد. الإطلاق يحمل على المعتاد. إطلاق, basically unqualified terms, are interpreted according to what is customary, معتاد. Imam al-Bukhari devoted a chapter in his book of sales, Kitab al-Biyu', to this title. باب من أجرى أمر الأمصار على ما يتعارفون بينهم في البيوع والإجارة والمكيال والوزن وسننهم على نياتهم ومذاهبهم المشهورة. وقال شريح للغزالين سنتكم بينكم ربحا. And then, like I explained in the document that you have, that this is, the ribhan is not suitable here. It's probably a typo or something in the manuscripts. So whoever enacted the practices of, the translation for this is whoever enacted the practices of townspeople based on what they customarily agree upon in sales, leases, measures, weights, and the recognized intentions and prevailing norms. Shuraih said to the weavers, your practice among yourselves as profit, which I indicated that your practice among yourselves is binding. Okay. And then he mentioned the Prophet saying, خُذِي مَا يَكْفِيكِ وَوَلَدَكِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, take whatever is sufficient for you and your children according to ma'ruf, good, reasonable, customary. Okay. وَمَنْ كَانَ فَقِيرًا فَلْيَأْكُلْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the caretakers of the orphans. He said, and whoever is poor, let him eat according to ma'ruf, good, reasonable, customary. Al-Hasan al-Basri rented a donkey from Abdullah ibn Mirdas. So he went to Abdullah ibn Mirdas and rented a donkey from him. And he said to him, for how much? And then Abdullah ibn Mirdas said to him, 2 danaqs. 2 danaqs. So Al-Hasan al-Basri took the donkey. He came back another time and he said to him, the donkey. So he gave him the donkey. He took it and he left. They didn't make an agreement. They didn't make a second agreement. He just said the donkey, and he gave him the donkey. So we presume what here? That it's an established custom. That the rent is 2 dinars. Just like when you get on the bus, you don't have to make an agreement with the driver every time, how much the fee is or the ticket is, and you get on a boat or something like it's, et cetera, et cetera. And the same applies to checking into hotels. Like you don't have to have an agreement that checkout is at 3 p.m. Oh, I'm sorry, that's check-in. The checkout is at 11, right? So you don't have to agree on all of these terms because it's all established by custom. Okay. Then, so this title, and we said the Fiqh of Imam al-Bukhari is in his titles. So this title and this particular chapter by Imam al-Bukhari, Ibn al-Munayyir, as reported by Ibn Hajar, commented on it, and he said, and others as well, he said the intent of this chapter title is to affirm the authority of urf, affirm the authority of urf. So anyone who tells you all of the usul al-fiqh and Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyya, these are just concoctions, new contemporary people, new concoctions and stuff, that's absolutely false, absolutely untrue. And then he said, and that urf overrides the apparent meanings of words in legal judgment. Urf overrides the apparent meanings of words in legal judgment. If I have an apparent meaning and I have an urf, an established urf that conflicts with it, I prioritize urf. I prioritize urf all the time, every time. Okay. It appears, so I say here that it appears that the chapter heading indicates that it does not only apply to verbal expressions, but it also applies to practical practice, practice, not just verbal expressions. So let's take some examples. So the most commonly, when we're talking about understanding people's speech, the most commonly cited example on this does not suit us Hanbalis, unfortunately. When you say, I will not eat meat, and then you eat fish. Hanbalis will say, you broke your oath, but they cite this as an example on, customs being sort of authoritative, and in this case, the custom, it's not customary for people to call fish meat. Meat is meat. Meat is basically the meat like lamb, beef, that would be meat. When people talk about lahm, not meat, lahm. So samak, fish, is, when people say, I will eat meat, I will not eat meat, they refer to lamb and beef, they don't refer to fish. So if someone says, Wallahi, I will not eat meat, and then they eat fish, Hanbalis will say he broke his oath because Allah called it lahman tarayya. Allah called it in the Quran, tender meat, tender meat. So, but is this in opposition to the Qaida? It is in opposition to the Qaida. We have to be honest. It is in opposition to the Qaida. So the Qaida would have meant what? Prioritize what's customary. It's not customary for people to go. Okay, but the Hanbalis have a lot of examples where it's completely consistent with the Qaida, such as ru'us, shiwa, eggs, things of that nature. Let's take some examples. So one of the examples, for instance, is if someone says, I will not ride a dabba. Dabba. What is dabba in Arabic? Anything that walks is dabba. But what is the customary usage? Horses, mules, and donkeys, riding beasts. So if you ride like an elephant in Arabia, not maybe in other places it's a riding beast, but in the Arabia, or you ride like a lion, whether if you can. Did you break your oath? We say, no, you did not break your oath. Because even though in the language, it refers to everything that walks, customarily, it only refers to riding beasts, that's horses, mules, and donkeys. Okay. Also, if you say, I will not eat shiwa. Shiwa is roast. Does this apply to anything that's grilled? What if you grill eggs and you eat them? Did you break your oath? No, you did not, because customarily, shiwa refers to grilled meat, roasted meat. Okay, if you, there are some places where there would be some disagreement among the scholars. So if you say, for instance, I will not eat ru'us, heads or eggs, heads or eggs, ru'us. You know, if, like in Egypt, for instance, there are certain restaurants in certain places that actually cook heads, just heads, and yeah. So if you say I will not eat heads, does this apply to heads of fish and birds, or heads that are sold separately and basically served separately? Only heads that are sold separately and served separately in the dominant position in the madhab. It took over. That position took over. Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la, who is the sheikh of Abu al-Khattab, said it applies to any heads. Heads of birds, heads of fish, it just applies. Well, if you say I will not eat eggs and you eat fish eggs, it applies. And then, but the position that took over is the position of Abu al-Khattab, where he says it applies to heads that are independently sold, you know, separately served, or eggs that are separate in life from the you know, the bird or whatever. So like would apply to eggs that people eat separately, not fish eggs or something, or locust eggs or something like that. Okay. Then, so there is room here for disagreement. They do disagree, and you know, Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la is not somebody little in the madhab. So, and he is the Sheikh of Abu al-Khattab. So it is not, you know, always as straightforward. But the qaida should be consistent, and we should really try to respect the qaida unless there is wasf mu'athir in the particular ruling. There is like a quality that's consequential that makes us basically diverge from al-qaida. What about actions? The same applies. It's not only speech of the people. Actions of the people are also interpreted according to what's customary. We said qabd, position. We said tafarruq, separation. We said bay' al-mu'ata. Bay' al-mu'ata is basically what? How do we translate bay' al-mu'ata? So it is basically mutual exchange without a verbal agreement. Mutual exchange of the property or the merchandise without verbal agreement. So I come to you and say, you know, give me your iPhone for $100. And you hand me the iPhone and I give you the $100 and walk away. Is that an appropriate sale? Yes, except that the Shafi'is would not recognize it. Why? Because there is no basically formal offer and acceptance here. There is no formal offer and acceptance. Some of the Shafi'is agreed with us, but you know, it's a controversial issue anyway. But in our madhab, that is clearly permissible, you know. Okay. Second type, okay, let's go over. So Imam al-Qudama mentions, you know, when he tries to justify bay' al-mu'ata, that type of sale, when he tries to justify it, he says, our evidence was that Allah permitted sale without specifying its manner. Allah permitted sale without so without specifying its manner. So it is referred to urf, such like the qabd and ihraz and other things are referred to urf. And then he goes on to say Muslims conduct their markets and sales in this way. You know, so he's using what? He's using the ongoing practice. And then he says that the same applies to offer and acceptance in hiba, gifts, hadiyah, presents, and sadaqah, charity. So if I go to like someone to give them charity, I don't have to, we don't have to have a formal offer and acceptance. You just give them the money. Sometimes you give it to them like discreetly. You want it as much as you can to do it discreetly and stuff like this. So they become owners of the money. Yes, become owners of the money. Okay. He also said it's permissible to lease a qamis, like a tunic, as we mentioned before, for wearing with the same. So anyway, qualification and specification of the speech of people, according to us and the Hanafis, could be established through urf, amali, that's practical custom, just as verbal expression. For example, if he says, I sold it to you for 10 sihah or 10 mukassara or 11 mukassara, for 10 basically unbroken coins or 11 clipped or broken coins. So where coins? What coins? Sihah means unbroken. I didn't specify the coins. I didn't specify the currency. So will we validate this agreement despite the ambiguity? Yes, in our madhab, we will validate this agreement despite its ambiguity, and we will basically refer back to what the predominant currency. So if and if I have more than one currency in that particular town, then the more predominant of them. And I have equally predominant, then I'll take the average. So we'll try to figure it out to تصحيح العقد, to validate the contract. Okay, which is the predominant currency is a naqd al-ghalib. So if you understand what has preceded, that's my statement, then know that recourse to a'raf and adat, customs and habits, is one of the major legal maxims in fiqh and one of the foundation principles relied upon by judges of all schools in interpreting actions and the meanings of words across innumerable applications such as contracts, oaths, waqf, wasiyya, measurements, mahr al-mithl, which is the customary dower based on comparable cases, kafa'a in nikah, kafa'a in marriage, which is suitability or compatibility in marriage, and in disputes where no evidence is available or when evidences are equal, such as determining the orientation of walls and construction, a wall between me and you, is it yours or mine? Then we will have to figure out where the nuts are tied and stuff like this to determine if it's yours or mine. The tying of ropes or disputed over household furnishings, when the spouses dispute over, this couch is mine or this couch is yours, then we will have to figure this out. Give men what belongs to men, give women what belongs to women, and then try to figure out the rest. So customs are authoritative to the extent that the Maliki jurists themselves differed regarding whether a prevailing aada would be counted as one witness or two witnesses. If you count it as one witness, a prevailing aada, you count it as one witness, there is a dispute, and there is a prevailing custom, supporting your claim. Does that prevailing custom that supports your claim count as one witness or two witnesses? The Maliki disagreed over this. We do not require an oath with it. Therefore, we're counting it as what? Two witnesses. Because if we count it as one witness, we will require you to take an oath. If you disagree with your spouse over like whether this particular property is yours or hers, and customs testify on your behalf or her behalf, or support your side or your argument or her argument, we will not require an oath. We'll just go by the custom. Okay. So we'll go by the custom. Whatever is for men belongs to you. Whatever is for women belongs to her. And the couch, we will divide it between you because it doesn't really belong to a particular genderless. So the couch will have to be Divide. Okay, so that is why, because marriage is based on fadl, not adl. It does not work on adl. Marriage is not like any partnership. It doesn't work on justice. It works on graciousness. And that's why Allah said, وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Don't forget graciousness in dealings among yourselves. Anyone who goes into marriage with a notion of, justice, rights, and obligations only, but that never means that we will not have to observe rights and obligations, because you can never figure out what graciousness is unless you know what justice is. Is that right or not wrong? You have to know what justice is to be able to figure out what graciousness is. Okay. The third. Okay, so we're done with this. Now the third, which is the most important one. We're talking about adaptation here of legal rulings. So it ought to be a sensitive discussion. Sensitive discussion. We will not, this discussion, this is the most important discussion when we talk about customs, most important discussion. But we will not finish it off today. We will address it in more detail when we address the qaida, the subsidiary maxim, al-Qa'ida al-Far'iyya, subsidiary maxim, that says what? لا ينكر تغير الأحكام بتغير الزمان. The change of rulings is not basically denounced upon change of times. Change of rulings upon change of times is not to be denounced, it's not to be rejected. So when we address this, we will talk in more detail. But in summary, the rulings which are justified by specific manatat tied to customs, specific effective causes. And again, as a reminder, specific effective causes, liability, because every time we say prohibition and intoxication, and I know that you may be bored and sick of this example, prohibition and intoxication. So prohibition of drinking something is tied to intoxication, sukr. But let's use another example. So liability and tafrit, negligence. So this is the manat of this. Negligence is the manat of this, the effective cause of this. So when there is negligence, there is liability. Okay, effective cause, the manat, the legal rationale behind making you liable. Legal reason, legal rationale, effective cause, however you will want to translate manat or illa. Manat or illa. Manat is like, manat is that which you attach something on. It's like a hanger, like you hang stuff on it. So that is manat. So the ruling is hung on this effective cause. Okay, so we're saying that the things that will change, 5 prayers a day. What is the manat here that will change with customs? Nothing. Obligation of 5 daily prayers. Where is the manat that is going to change with customs? There is nothing. Therefore, this is outside this discussion. But let's take some examples of manatat that will change of customs. For Ibn al-Najjar, for instance, in his discussion of examples under al-Ada Muhakkama, mentions the hadith of Haram ibn Muhayyisa about al-Bara ibn Azib's camel that went into an orchard and caused much destruction in the orchard. So the Prophet ﷺ sort of assigned the liability for this destruction. He said that the orchard owners or the garden owners, farm owners, are required to safeguard their property during the day, and livestock owners are required to watch their livestock during the night. Okay, so here he based the liability on custom, because in that time it was expected of the farm owners to be, at their farms during the day, taking care of their farms during the day. So they want to watch, basically repel the livestock, the intruding into the farm. And then at night, it was expected that the livestock would go back to their stables and during the night. So the Prophet ﷺ based liability on custom. What if in a particular place, in a particular time, livestock owners are expected to take care of their livestock 24 hours, 24/7? Then in this case, the ruling will shift. And that's what Imam al-Najjar says, that this is a matter, so, and then we will come to it. We will come to it because this is the manat. And if this moves, who's negligent? The Prophet said something, based on the customs of the time and assigned the negligence to the livestock owners or the farm owners, but in a different time, this negligence will shift. And if the negligence shifts, the ruling shifts or not? Shifts. Is this a change in the divine address? No, because the divine address is attaching this to this, not attaching this to you being livestock owner, or a farm owner. It's not consequential. Liability is attached to tafrit. Whoever, falls into tafrit negligence will be liable. That's it. And that is what many people fail to understand, that between the ruling and the actual application, there is something in the middle that the layperson may not be able to grasp, which is the effective cause. Are rulings attached to basically the final sort of the individual practice, or there is something in the middle between them? There is something in the middle between them, and the rulings are attached to this thing in the middle. That's called the legal reason or the effective cause. And that is what people fail to understand when, the fatwa change. And they think that, people are changing the deen or something, which is not true. Okay, so Imam Shatibi rahimahullah says something that's very beautiful, so we'll read it and translate it because it's beautiful. He says, إن اختلاف الأحكام عند اختلاف العوائد ليس في الحقيقة باختلاف في أصل الخطاب، لأن الشرع موضوع على أنه دائم أبدي لو فرض بقاء الدنيا إلى ما لا نهاية، والتكليف كذلك لم يحتج في الشرع إلى مزيد. لو فرض بقاء الدنيا إلى ما لا نهاية والتكليف كذلك لم يحتج في الشرع إلى مزيد. ومعنى الاختلاف أن العوائد إذا اختلفت رجعت كل عادة إلى أصل شرعي يحكم بها فالأحكام ثابتة تتبع أسبابها حيث كانت بإطلاق. The variation of rulings with the variation of customs is not, in reality, a variation in the original address of the lawgiver. For the Sharia is established as something permanent and eternal. If the world were imagined to continue without end, the law would still suffice without the need for addition. So adaptation is not addition. The meaning of variation is that when customs change, each custom returns to its corresponding legal principle, not livestock owner negligence, because this is not attached to being a livestock owner, it's attached to negligence. Returns to its corresponding legal principles that governs it. Thus, rulings are fixed and follow their causes wherever they are, absolutely. Okay. So the relationship between Shara and Urf, the relationship between Sharia and Urf or Sharia and customs. And I say here, so again, because this is a sensitive issue and people fail to understand it and people can be extreme about it in either direction. So what do we mean by this maxim? What if, it became, people's norms change and people's norms do change all the time? Is the Sharia meant to follow the whims of people or what? What is that? What does the maxim mean? Like if people became accustomed to immodesty, if people became accustomed to like drinking, alcohol or things of that nature. In some Muslim countries that happened. It's not like an abstract or like hypothetical. No, it happens. So, okay. We're saying that if there is a text, then the custom is basically not going to, text means nas, like, something that is definitive in its implication. Okay. Then the custom that contradicts it is going to be like void, general or specific, because the objective of the Sharia, as Imam Shatibi also says eloquently, is إخراج المكلف عن داعية هواه ليكون عبدا لله اختيارا كما هو عبد لله اضطرارا. So, which means what? To remove the mukallaf, the legally accountable, the morally responsible, from the pull of his own whims so that he becomes a servant of God by choice as he is a servant of God by necessity. So we're all servants of God, no matter what, no matter what. That is called servant of God by necessity, and I understand that, sometimes the language, like one of the mashayikh said about Trump one day that he is like just another servant of God. And certainly like, it has some ambiguity, but there are two different types of servants of God. There is a servant of God by necessity and there is a servant of God by choice. So he meant a servant of God by necessity. Of course, it is ambiguous, and ambiguity always creates issues. But at any rate, so that's just to understand that concept. We're all servants of God. You cannot not be servant. This is like, do you control your heartbeats? Do you control your intestinal movements? Are you aware of what is happening inside your body? You're just completely clueless. There are trillions of basically reactions and things that are happening inside your body right now that you're not aware of. You're not aware of completely. So you are a servant of God by necessity. But the Sharia came to make you a servant of God, the God who controls your heartbeats now. The Sharia wants you to be in conformity with his will, not just by necessity, but by choice. Okay, so that's what this means. But there are certain things here where we have like certain conflicts, and because I have like 5 things for you that I want you to really understand well. I have a conflict between urf and ijtihad, a conflict between urf and, if urf, our contemporary urf contradicts itself based on prevailing custom. If a ruling changes with the change of custom because of the clarity of the manat, if the urf comes in conflict with qiyas or analogical reasoning, and if there is a conflict between a general wording of the Sharia and urf. So let's take the first one. Between ijtihad, between ijtihad and urf. Ijtihad and urf. So an ijtihad can be based on the urf of the scholars during their time. We mentioned, financial maintenance, once a week meat, every day bread, stuff. Like this ijtihad changes, urf changes, of course, without any doubt. Okay, so, but what if, the same would apply when text, the text that the urf now contradicts itself is based on prevailing custom, as in the case of holding livestock. the text of the revelation where the Prophet ﷺ made the livestock owners liable at night and the farm owners liable during the day. That very text is based on customs. So that very text changes with customs, because the Prophet ﷺ did not mean to fix liability to livestock owners or farm owners. He wanted to fix liability to negligence. Okay, then another one, the ruling changes with the change of custom due to the clarity of the manat, the effective cause. And sometimes confusion arises. So Imam Taymiyyah takes a position that is different from the rest of the Hanbalis, although his positions are always mentioned as wajh in the madhab, but it doesn't mean that it is the dominant wajh, because just like all great Hanbali scholars, their positions are mentioned as wuju, but not just a great Hanbali. You need to be sahib wajh. You need to be the top-notch scholar for your ijtihad that diverts or diverges from the madhab to be considered within the madhab as a wajh inside the madhab. So he says, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ forbade trading rice for rice, for instance, or like he said, barley for barley. He didn't say rice because they didn't have rice, but barley for barley. But it applies to rice, but barley for barley. Barley for how did they used to trade barley? By weight or volume? Volume. So it's makil, it's not mawzoon. بالكيل لا بالوزن. By weight, not by volume. By volume, not by weight. By volume, not by weight. What if, and the Prophet ﷺ said, when you trade barley for barley, it has to be equal for equal. Hand to hand, equal for equal. Barley for barley. Hand to hand, equal for equal. It has to be the same volume, right? Or weight, volume. Because barley was traded in volume during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. What if the customs change? People now, how do people sell barley now, or rice, or anything? By volume or weight? Anybody is selling anything now by volume? No. Everything is being sold by weight now. So what if these customs change? Like so Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah said, then what matters is the custom now, not the custom then. So when we trade barley for barley, we trade barley for barley equal weight for weight. Weight for weight, not volume. Weight. Is this clear or too? It's clear, okay? Clear. Huh? Yeah, because keep in mind, if I barley for barley, weight for by weight, it may be different in volume. Because different types of barley, different types of dates, different types of dates. If equal volume may be unequal weight. Equal weight may be unequal volume. What matters? The custom during the time of the Prophet ﷺ or during our time? So the Hanbali said, we stick to the customs during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So Imam Taqiyuddin said, we go by the customs today. Okay, so there's room here for some disagreement. But like we talked before, like Imam Taqiyuddin tried to be very consistent in his application of Qawaaid. So he takes a qaida and he tries to stick with it consistently and apply it across the board. Another issue is custom or urf may also come into conflict with qiyas. We have several applications here, qiyas and custom and urf. Okay, so let's just take two applications, istisna and dukhul al-hammam. Istisna is what? Commissioned manufacturing. commissioned manufacturing. It is a type of transaction that is known across cultures and civilizations. Everybody does it. You go to a shoemaker. Nobody does this anymore, but you go to a shoemaker and you tell the shoemaker to make you a pair of shoes, and then you agree on a price, and then he makes you the shoes, and then you come and get your shoes, pay him, get your shoes, and walk away. Is this a permissible transaction? By qiyas? No. What is wrong with this transaction? You sold a non-existent property. You sold a non-existent property to be manufactured. You sold something that has not been manufactured yet. Non-existent property. Okay, so how do the Hanbalis, keep in mind, the fuqaha were always clever, so they get around things. So they couldn't do it this way, according to their principles. So they said, we'll make it ja'ala. What is ja'ala? It's contingent, contingent compensation contract, whatever it is that we translated, however we translated it in Umdat al-Fiqh. But ja'ala, is when I tell you, if you build me a wall, I'll give you this much. I'll give you this much. The material needs to be from me, not from you. And I am paying you for your labor. It's contingent upon doing the job. Contingent upon doing the job. It is not hiring you. It is giving you a compensation for a job well done or done, for a job, a finished job. Find me my camel and I'll give you $200. We're not, the time that will take you to find it, the effort that will take you to find it, it's all, ambiguous. But ja'ala is a permissible contract. So the Hanbalis, since istisna to them did not work out according to their principles because you're selling a non-existent property, they said, let's make it ja'ala. You bring the raw material to the manufacturer, give him the leather, tell him, make me a pair of shoes, out of this material for, 2 dinars. And that's it, you make it ja'ala. However, most of contemporary Hanbalis allow istisna, because, even, like houses nowadays, you buy the house before they build it. There's like lots of things now so there is a need for this aqd. There is a need for aqd al-istisna. Therefore, contemporary Hanbalis allow istisna. I don't know of any contemporary Hanbali that doesn't allow istisna. If you know someone, let me know. Okay. Another one is dukhul al-hammam, and that applies to open buffet and things of that nature. So dukhul al-hammam, entry into the bathhouse. So when you enter into the bathhouse, how much water, how much soap, how much time are you going to spend? All of that stuff is ambiguous, but you pay like a standard fee, and you walk in, and electricity, water, soap, all of that stuff. People vary in their usage of these things, but it's standard fee. Is there gharar here, ambiguity in the contract here? Yes, there is. But why was it tolerated? Customs. That's what people just do. Customs. Okay. So here, an important issue that we have to keep in mind, we said that an explicit prohibition from Allah and His Messenger, explicit prohibition from Allah, customs will never be able to contradict or override something of that nature. But when you expand analogical reasoning to make people's life difficult, custom will override the expansion of qiyas to make this haram, everything is, because you're doing this by what? not by explicit statements from Allah and His Messenger, by your widening of the circle of analogical reasoning. Customs override that. Customs override that. Let's listen to Sheikh Wahb al-Zuhairi rahimahullah saying something here about this. He said, if there is a conflict between qiyas and urf, then by agreement, the analogical ruling or qiyas is set aside in favor of urf, even if the custom is newly arisen, as long as it is a general custom. For urf, in such a case, is a sign of haja, of need. The fact that people are doing it this way means that they need to do it this way. There is a need for them to do it this way. Therefore, he says, and it is therefore stronger than qiyas, and observing it aligns with maslaha or public welfare. Finally, conflict between general wording and urf. Conflict between general wording of the Sharia and urf. You know, general wording of the Sharia is different from specific wording. So when there is a general wording to not eat maita, is there room for a specification to exclude some types of carrion? Yeah, the Prophet excluded samak wal jarat, you know, fish and locusts from maita. So can a general statement be, you know, restricted by specification or qualification or something of that nature? Yes. Can it be restricted by urf? It depends. It depends. Okay, so let's go over it. So Imam Malik, for instance, like I give you an example on this. Imam Malik, for instance, والوالدات يرضعن أولادهن حولين كاملين لمن أراد أن يتم الرضاعة. You know, so Allah said that mothers breastfeed their babies for 2 full years for he who desires to finish the rada'ah. He said that this is not an obligation on sort of women of status. So wealthy women, like, you know, I hate classism, but just like, you know, upper class women, this is not, I hate classism in the sense of, you know, in the bad sense of the word, but, you know, Allah created us in the sort of, whatever, anyway, a long discussion. So there are classes, well, we can't deny it, it's just like an ontological reality, but I hate classism in the negative sense of the word, where people's worth is determined by their socioeconomic class, which is completely anti-Islamic. But Imam Malik recognizes that, you know, there are customs that have to be observed, and these customs were there during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and women continued. You know, women, you know, of higher status, who breastfed the Prophet ﷺ? Halima Sa'diyya, not Amina. So, okay, so women of status did not used to breastfeed their babies. They used to find a wet nurse for their babies. Therefore, Imam Malik said it's not obligatory on women of status. What is this? Specification by custom of the general wording of the revelation. Okay, so this is an example that's usually given. There is an example also of the scattered prey, which is a tarida, scattered prey or a tarida. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma ubina min al-mayta min al-bahima wa hiya hayya fahuwa mayta." Whatever is separated, cut off from livestock while alive is considered carrion, is considered dead carrion. You can't eat it, not halal. So if you cut off a limb of an animal while the animal is alive, is this halal to eat? No, it is not. Oh, according to one narration, not the dominant narration, in the Hanbali madhab, Imam Ahmad allows the tarida, scattered prey. When, you know, like a gazelle, for instance, runs through the army and they strike it with the sword, so, you know, limbs get separated and everybody gets what they got. I mean, it sounds cruel, but like, but you know, wartime is wartime, I guess. And particularly if you're hungry and if you're at war and you're hungry, you're probably not going to. Anyway, so in this case, he said that it would be allowable to eat it. Why did he say this? Because al-Hasan al-Basri said people have been doing it. People have been doing it. Okay, this is specification of a general wording by custom? Yes. Okay, so in our madhab, do customs specify general wordings? There is a discussion here. So Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah in al-Musawwada quotes Imam Abu al-Khattab. Imam Abu al-Khattab. Imam Abu al-Khattab died how many years before Imam Taymiyyah was born? Maybe 150 years. 150 years. Yeah. So he quotes Imam Abu al-Khattab, and that is why there has to, you know, we have to always have continuity of the tradition, continuity of the, we build on each other. We do not disconnect from the tradition, but we are not basically bound by statements of scholars. We're bound by statements of Allah and His Messenger. But we respect the understanding of the scholars. We build on the tradition, but we're only bound by you know, statements of Allah and His Messenger. So Imam Taqiyuddin quotes Imam Abu al-Khattab and says that he said it's not permissible, according to us, to specify a general expression based on customary practice. So we don't specify that the general wordings of the Sharia are to be accepted in their generality. Customs don't specify the general wordings of the Sharia. That's what he's trying to say. But then he says, but this is not, it's more nuanced than this. And Imam Taymiyyah said it's more nuanced and detailed than this. So he says that it's agreed upon within our madhab upon a particular scenario or a particular application. Let us say there are different types of bloods, and people were accustomed to consuming one type of blood, and the Sharia came to prohibit the consumption of blood. Then that specific custom will not override the generality of the Sharia, will not override the generality of the divine address. But then he says, you know, there are some other examples, some other scenarios. He says, if the Sharia came to prohibit, let's say, let's give you a hypothetical now. The Sharia came to prohibit dawab, the consumption of dawab, riding animals. And it was customary that riding animals refer to what? Horses, mules, and donkeys, not anything else. Then that specifies the general wording of the Sharia. And he says, this is in reality not a specification of rulings. It is a specification in language. It's linguistic specification, because that is the customary usage of the word in their times. He mentions also some cases of a specification by Imam Ahmad that would apply to this, to the intent, to the usage of the word, and so on. So if someone bequeath this, but this is not the Sharia, this is the speech of people here. So if someone bequeath this to his relatives, and Imam Ahmad said that it will, the bequest will go to which relatives? The relatives that he used to sort of extend kindness to, or that he used to be benevolent towards. Not all relatives, but certain relatives. That's specification of a general wording. But this will apply only if the generality of the word or the term was not clearly intended. If the generality of the word was not clearly intended, or there is a difficulty in applying the generality of the word or the term because it's just like too many relatives, like who's going to get this, then we specified by customs. So Imam Taqiyuddin says specification of a general expression by customary practice is valid when it means limiting the ruling to what was commonly acted upon and widely beneficial, or to the particular items commonly included in such speech at the time. Dawab in that time meant horses, mules, and donkeys. He cites Ahmad's limitation of the Prophet's prohibiting urinating in stagnant water to natural water bodies, excluding man-made reservoirs. So Imam Taqiyuddin says this is akin to specification by cause. Akin to specification by cause. So when you say, you know, you guys all do that, by the way, like everybody urinates in the toilet bowl, right? That's stagnant water, isn't it? When you do it, it's stagnant. Yeah, I mean, you can flush afterwards. Does the prohibition apply? No, the prohibition does not apply. You know, it would be anachronistic to say the prohibition applies. Because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he was talking about natural water bodies. Natural water bodies. He was not talking about man-made reservoirs, artificial man-made reservoirs. So Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, he said, we will specify the prohibition by what was customary during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it will not, that's Imam Ahmad, by the way, saying this. So, so we will specify it. The same applies to the idea of photographs. Photographs are called surah. Surah is an image. The Prophet prohibited images. Does that include photographs? It would be anachronistic to say the Prophet prohibited photographs. But this does not end the discussion. This does not end the discussion. So why? So it does not apply to photographs, okay? And why does it not apply to photographs? Because the fact that photographs are linguistically included does not mean that the effective cause is present. The effective cause is present. So we have two effective causes for the prohibition of imagery. One of them is imitation of the creation of God. And the other one is basically the negative consequences, you know, over-glorification of imagery and things of that nature. And this is not unimportant. This is huge. This is huge. You know, like Towards Understanding Islam by Sheikh al-Mawdudi, rahimahullah, he talks about, you know, like he's the first one to bring my attention to this fact, that the fact that after a revolution, the first thing that people do is to bring down the images of the monarch, the king, the president, because of the huge impact such images have on the public, the huge impact such images have on the public. So there is a huge impact, these images. And it's not only about idols, it's not only about Hubal and Manan, you know, so images of monarchs and so on, you find them in every square, you find them, you know, every like government official, you know, not in America, but back in Egypt. So every guy, like, they're trying to do away with this to a certain extent, right? Like you watch this many times now, I see Allah as, instead of the, you know, yeah, the president. Yeah, so there's, I mean, it's cosmetic stuff. But anyway, yeah, so you have these are effective causes. So these are effective causes of the prohibition of imagery. Therefore, when we have photographs, this is not going to be qiyas by language, basically saying that this is an image, therefore the Prophet prohibited images, so it's prohibited. So we will say, yeah, this is an image, but it's a little bit different, so this may not apply, and if we ensure that this does not apply, then photographs will be okay. So if we ensure no over-glorification, no spread of indecency, no over-glorification, none of these bad outcomes. So if you have photographs of your children and you keep them in an album and you go over that, that's probably okay. You see, so the idea here is what? We have to understand the custom during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, al-urf al-muqarin lil-khitab, the custom concurrent with the divine address, so that we, when our application, in our extrapolation, in our extension, we're cognizant of the custom, because the custom tells us about the manatat, the effective causes, the legal reasons, the rationale. Okay, finally, I'm going to read this statement and end. It appears to me that such specification applies when the new case differs from the original in a legally relevant way. Specification applies when the new case differs from the original in a legally relevant way, affecting the effective cause, the manat, the illah, in a legally relevant way, even if it falls under the general linguistic term, as in the case of photographic images. Likewise, customary practices concurrent with the time of revelation, which specify a general text by the actions of the companions, are valid if approved by the Prophet ﷺ or agreed upon by the companions, or some practiced them and the others did not object. For summary, people's speech should have its generality specified by their custom and usage unless an intent to generalize is evident. As for the address of the lawgiver, it is to be carried upon its general wording unless the specification arises from linguistic convention concurrent with the address or from customary practice that bears on the legal ruling. So people's speech, understand it within their custom. So we're quicker to specify people's speech. Divine address, to protect the sacredness of divine address, we're respecting the generality of divine address, except if there are certain conditions that will say that the custom is basically consequential here, then we will pay attention to the custom and specify the divine address by the custom. قولوا قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.